Welcome to my little backstage tour here of my studio. So I wanted to give y'all a little picture of what it's like behind the scenes in the space that I've worked in for more than 25 years. I've had this space in downtown Columbia since the mid 90s, and it was originally, right before me, the practice studio of Hootie and the Blowfish. A little bit of Columbia trivia because that's where they're from. And when they moved out, I moved in, and it had good hootie cooties that served me well for a long, long time. So it's not a live video because I can't get up to Columbia right now to take you on a video tour. So I've pulled together some slides to give you an overview of what my studio looks like and how I have it organized. And I'm doing that in air quotes because it is not a pristine studio by any manner of means. So this is the front door, and I took this a couple of years ago when we had Columbia Open Studios. It's the description I usually give to people of how to find my space. Go to the big red door on the corner of Blossom and Hardin. It's a main intersection in Columbia's Five Points district, which is an old shopping district downtown. A fantastic neighborhood to work in. Once you're inside the studio, you can see I'm a little bit of a clutter bug, but it's an organized clutter. Once you're inside the studio, I have 3 rooms, and it is upstairs above retail shops. So go up a staircase and down the hall. It's an old building from 1920s, 1930s. I keep waiting for the Maltese Falcon to play and somebody to come walking out of Humphrey Bogart to come walking out of one of the office spaces. It's got a great feel to it. So I've got 3 rooms. The first room that you come into is the one that I use as an office. And you can see right here I have a desk, some cabinets and filing cupboards, and it holds the business side of running a studio space. That bulletin board behind my chair is crucial. I stick up inspirational images, photos of my horse, photos of my child, just favorite images and ideas go behind there. I also have office supplies in trays and racks to the left so that I can access them easily. There's my bulletin board with my inspiration images on there. You can see the horse figures in there pretty heavily. And the ever-present priority mail shipping boxes for shipping out paintings. On one wall, and I use these metal shelves heavily in the studio. In that office space, I store things like my coffee supplies and regular paper and office supplies and the reception happy hour supplies. One thing that we have done in that space for years is to run our own happy hours and invite in our local customers to come and just hang out, have a glass of wine, and take a look at whatever the new art is. So I've collected over the years bowls and plates and trays and things for those happy hours and keep those stashed on that shelf and out of the way. Then if you turn to the left is the entrance to the main studio space, the main room, which is about 300 square feet. So overall, I have about 600 square feet in that studio space, and the inside of the main room that I work in is about 300 square feet. And while the office has horrible light in it, the main studio has almost an overabundance of light. I have big eastern windows that look out over the street down below, and I have northern light that comes in through the storage room windows. So I have a lot of light that comes in the space. And I have had a futon in there for my own sitting and resting and looking at paintings, and to have a space to socialize with potential customers and clients. To the right of the sofa is again another shelf that holds magazines and books, more inspirational material, and has had some of my plein air equipment stored on it down below. I also have an old drawing table there that I use for working on paper, and keep all of those kind of surfaces covered with brown paper so that it's easy to take off and clean, and I don't have mess getting onto the surfaces of workspaces. Down below is my old favorite chair that I've had since graduate school. It's ratty looking, but it is my magical studio chair, as well as stools that I sit on sometimes when I'm working. I think a studio chair is super important. You need a place to sit and you need a place to look at your work, because looking is as important as painting. Down underneath the table, you can see the red oily waste can. That's crucial if you have oil paint. So you need to dispose of oily waste like paper towels that have oils on them in a can that has a lid that automatically shuts, so that you don't have any spontaneous combustion that can set a studio space on fire. And it should be emptied every single day so that you're not leaving that oily waste inside your work environment. Now, I store large paintings behind that drawing table, and I have 2 extra easels that are back in that corner too. You really can't see it from here. It's kind of hidden behind the paintings that are hanging on there, but I have 3 huge big gatorboard panels that are 4 by 6 foot. I think they're about 1.5 inches thick gatorboard. I got those decades ago when a friend of mine worked at the State Museum, and they were the leftovers after an exhibition. So you can scarf those up at times, and they make fantastic surfaces to hang big drawing paper from, or painting paper, when you're working really large. So that's what you see that black and white piece hanging on. It is hanging off of the big gator board using bear clips. So that's what I work on when I'm working out ideas for larger paintings. I very, very much love working in black and white first on large pieces to work out the value relationships. Y'all know I talk about that a lot before moving on to canvas or panel at the large scale. So there's a better view of that. You can see the top of the gator board right there. So those are really handy, and you can occasionally find those if you can make contact with people who work in museum exhibition spaces where they might have those kind of panels in the education wing of the museum. Turning a little more to the left, when I'm working large, that canvas that you see to the left is about 5 feet wide and 6 feet tall. The one next to it behind the easel, it looks so small there, but it's not. It's actually quite large. The one behind the easel is, I think, another 4 by 5 footer. It may be a little larger than that. But I generally work on those very, very large paintings hanging from the wall or lifted up on top of boxes when I need to get them up a little bit higher. But I don't tend to work on really large paintings on easels. They just kind of overwhelm the easel and move around too much, and I find it works better to hang them from the wall when I'm working on that. So the easel there is where I work on smaller pieces. That's I believe that's 24 by 24 that's on there right now. And I have a cart that I'm going to show you in just a minute where I keep my palette box and my paints, and it can move around to wherever it is that I'm working. You can see the arm of my favorite chair down there in the lower left-hand corner, always angled so that I can take a good long look at whatever it is that I'm working on. So there's that cart again. And the paints are all a jumble because there's a basket that used to go in there. and you'll see it in another shot that I have. And the basket fell out and all the paints got jumbled up, and I had not reordered them yet. So just like with the drawing table, I put brown paper on top of the cart surface. That was a regular kitchen cart. It has wheels on the bottom. I inherited it from a friend, and it makes a fantastic moving tabaret and quite significantly cheaper than the special ones designed just for artists. So I recommend looking at alternative sources for your studio furniture when possible, because you'll notice that as soon as it's labeled artist studio furniture, it gets jacked up in price. Behind that is a storage unit. It's a small cabinet storage unit where I put framed works underneath that are rotating out in and out of exhibitions. And on top of that cabinet is my workspace for my small printing press. So you can see there in the back, let me zoom in here a little bit. You can see here in the back where there's a small press. I bought that 10 years ago so that I could teach monotype workshops, and have loved having it. It's lightweight. I can actually lift it myself. It weighs 40 pounds, which is unusual for an etching press. It is about 15 inches wide, so I can do small etchings, small intaglios, and small monotypes on it. Love having that around. And the brushes behind there are ones that I use with monotype. So it's all monotype equipment for the most part that is on top of that, that cabinet. So that it ends up being a fairly efficient use of space. To the left of that are paintings that are in progress or in the rework bin. So I keep a box of paintings that to me are rejects that I want to redo or do something else with in that corner back there. And once it gets high enough, then I'll go in and pull some out and see what I can do to fix them or change them or paint over them. But everybody should have a rework bin. There's another shot of the easel, and you can see the rework bin back there in the background. Almost all the paintings that are stacked there are ones that need to be redone, worked over, changed, adjusted. So I keep those around until if they're total disasters, I'll cut them up and get rid of them. But most of those are salvageable. So here is a little bit better shot of the cart, and you can see the basket that came apart and then dumped all the paints. So the easel palette box, aka the French Mistress, from Richardson goes on top. Has a piece of plexiglass in there, and when it's closed up, it keeps the paint fresh for several days at a time, especially when I put some felt pads in there that have clove oil on them. And y'all may have seen that easel box here in my studio in Savannah as well. And again, you can see the press that back there behind the cart and the palette box. So on the bottom shelf, I have mediums. Now, I don't use mediums very often. I've been sent samples, so they tend to go down there. But I do use things like linseed oil, stand oil, walnut oil. I have some of Gamblin's Galkeed down there, and it's also where my shellac can gets stored. So mediums and that sort of thing. You can see a tin there of the oil primer as well. Mediums go down below. And if I need to decant anything into a jar, you know, some of those medium containers have horrible child-proof lids on them. And I will usually pour those into a regular jar to get rid of the child-proof lid. And on the second shelf, the middle shelf, are the paints. Normally a little bit better organized than that. I like to have them in rows according to color so that I can find the appropriate color quickly. Then up above was that basket that had a come apart. It was great while it lasted, but that was the one that where I stored the paints that I used every day. Paper towels already torn into quarters, ready to work with. So that was the reach in and grab it quickly basket for the paints that I was going to be using. You can see the ones that I had out for the day behind the palette box. This is what the palette box looks like when it's in use. In this shot, I have just stuck a piece of regular paper underneath the palette so that I get a better sense of what I've got on there. And it's not, the wood grain is not interfering with my ability to mix the color. The opposite corner from my easel corner, just to the left of my sofa, is where I store portfolios full of prints, not reproductions, but original prints, monotypes, and etchings. And then on the wall is where I stick small paintings after I've done them to dry. And I also tend to have an arrangement filling that wall at any given time so that when I have a collector drop by, they can take a look and choose one from the wall that it's enticing to them. So somebody had asked me what I did to store small paintings while they dried, and this is my answer. I put them straight up on the wall so that they couldn't be run into, so that they had a chance to dry. Just to the left of that, you can see the edge of the doorway there. That doorway goes into my storage space, and it is primarily filled with shelving all the way around. The space is an odd shape. This is an old building, and my studio is on the front corner of it, and the storage room pretty much is an odd-shaped four-sided space, but the far end to the right is a very short wall. But I have filled it with the metal shelving, arranged so that I have storage for paintings and flat storage for works on paper. I have a shelf for frames, storage for paints and other materials, and other framing and matting supplies. So I'm going to take you on a little stroll through there. Just to the right, you can see how I have the metal shelving turned so that I could put boards across running from one shelf to the other, and then store large flat pieces of paper, foam core board on those shelves. So you don't have to buy expensive, fancy studio equipment for storage. Those metal shelves are extremely flexible in the way that you can arrange them. There's that northern window, and you can see immediately in front of you the shelf that contains or holds all of the supplies. So excess supplies I don't use all the time. Things like acrylics. I do use acrylics and watercolors, but I don't have them out all the time. So they stay stored in those bins out of the way. Extra mediums that I don't use all the time, those go in the bins on the top. Just to the left of that, you'll see panels that have recently been ordered. They're still in the plastic wrapped there. And there are more shelves to the left. A little bit better shot of that. So that shelf immediately in front of you is the one that holds the supplies. And I had just brought back in an exhibition of the small paintings, and they are still in their storage boxes right there. So that's the shelf to the right of the art materials where I store frames. So I have a wholesale license, and so I pick up frames from the wholesalers when they have them on sale, as well as purchasing them when I know I'm going to have an exhibition coming up. So I keep those stored according to size on those shelves so that when I need one, I can pull it out. Another shot of those bins. And they are arranged by medium, by tool, by the materials, so that they're all in one space and easy to find. And they're labeled, thanks to Stephanie. And also thanks to Stephanie. This is the shelving that holds flat works on paper. And again, labeled. Now, the way that I made this shelf, and the shelving can hold paper that is that standard 22 by 30 inch size, is I put one shelving unit in front of the other so that the shelf ends up being wide enough to hold that sized paper. It's 24 inches deep. And so it creates a really wonderful storage unit for holding those flat works that are not necessarily in portfolios. Although I have purchased some of the archival boxes, you see one still in the wrap right there, to hold those works on paper, and so that they'll be stored more archivally. So that shelf is just to the left of the window. And then next to that is the shelf where a storage unit for paintings. Most of those you see on there are down below are around 3 by 4 feet. I also have framed monotypes from an exhibition that had rotated back in down below. And I'll store any new panels that aren't ready to be worked on yet in that shelving unit as well. So I created that one the same as the one to the other side of the door. It is from 2 shelves turned perpendicular to the wall with wood running between them so that I can store large paintings upright on that shelving. And I put cardboard between them to keep them from dinging each other. This shelf is the other side of that unit that you just saw. And on this one, I store small panels and canvases. So you can see how those are lined up there. I think that is the last one I have in here. So I hope you've enjoyed the tour of the studio and gotten a little bit of a sense of what the space is like that I work in. And I just want to remind you, again, like I've said about other things, done is better than perfect. Your space does not have to be pristine, pure, and perfect. In fact, if it's used often enough, it's going to look a little cluttered because you're going to be in there working. The key thing is to arrange it and organize it so that it works for you. Having a space where you can store materials and surfaces and paintings is crucial, whether you have an entire room like I have there or whether you have a corner of a space. Having a space to work with wet media and dry media is really important. And having a space for your easel where it gets good light is super important. Having a workspace for the business side of running a studio is important. But it does not have to be perfect. Mine certainly isn't, but it works for me. Happy painting, everyone. Bye-bye for now.